All right. So we will get started. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We are going to be talking about the fun world of Active Directory, or now formerly known as Microsoft Entra, and the top 5 identity vulnerabilities every CISO needs to know. A little bit of housekeeping rules. We are recording this call, and the recording will be made available to those who are attending, who attended and registered but could not make it. Everyone has been placed on mute, and your cameras have been turned off. So if you do have questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat, or there's a Q&A section as well, in which you can ask the questions that both Paul and I can see as well. This is really an education session. We want everybody to, have some specific takeaways from this call. What we want you to do is have a good understanding of what is it in your identity-based infrastructure that is important, critical, and has to be 100% recoverable. What is it about it that you know and don't know and need to know? I'm going to leave you with some questions before we start, because I want you to reflect introspectively on this. I want you to think about, have you ever fully tested your Active Directory forest recovery? When was the last time you did that exercise? And I want you to also have in the back of your mind, what would be the operational impact, from a perspective of if AD was to go hard down for you right now, what would that mean to your company? Just think about that. Again, let's not dwell too much on it, but throughout the course of this presentation, I'd like you to keep that in the back of your mind. And so with that, my name is Nimnat Raja. Some of you may know me. I've been in this tech space for almost 30 years. I do this because I'm passionate about security, and I think my purpose on this planet is to make that available, to make security and access to security available to as many people and companies as possible. Joining me today is Paul from Semperis. I'll let him introduce himself.
Sure. Thanks, Nim. So Paul Greeley, based in Ottawa, Canada. I'm currently with Semperis. So I've been 23 years in the business. So 23 years, I started in desktop support in the government of Canada. I ended up being an architect for a 30,000-seat department for identity. From there, I moved to Microsoft. I was a senior PFE for 8 years with Microsoft, more or less in identity and security. That's where I specialized. But my passion is identity, and Semperis has basically one of the best collections of identity experts in the world, and I was honored when they asked me to join them. So yeah, here I am today. So nice to meet everybody.
Thank you, Paul. So we're going to start off with a cool statistics slide, security fraudonomics. Paul and I chuckled over this a little bit because, 80% of breaches are attributed to identity challenges. And of that, and we've put some of the references at the bottom of the slide, but 76% of organizations, they expect to be breached in the next 12 months. So with that, IBM published a report where they said the average cost of the breach is about $4.3 million. Now, Paul, you and I have been on some breaches recently. On the last one you were on, what was that like? What did that come in at?
That number is probably a little bit conservative. I think that number was actually higher on the couple of breaches that I was included on. So in a compromised recovery and incident response. Yeah, it was interesting.
So, just for fun, we did some P times Q math. We said if 80% are attributed to identity, 76% expect something. So what can we predict to be an identity-based loss due to identity? What are the losses due to identity in a breach situation? How can we quantify that? And we worked it out to be 2.6 million by saying, 80 times 7.6 times 4.3. But when we speak to our CIO and CISO friends in the industry, almost 90% of them plan to increase their spending on security operations. And the reason is, and ESG, is very similar to that, where they say 88%, is it's not a matter of whether or not you've gotten breached, but it's a matter of when. But the question is, where are you going to get breached from? And how are you going to get breached? And so this is where we have an exciting new sort of way of looking at things where, identity has become the new perimeter. Right, Paul?
Correct, yeah. So like gone are the days when we had the hard exterior of the perimeter with firewalls and protected. Like now identity is a new perimeter. Like, so we have a new normal in the workforce. We're not behind that perimeter all day anymore. Between, using cloud applications, consuming, cloud resources, all these things kind of lead into identity being just as big of an important perimeter as the physical perimeter. So I always use the example of the caramel bar for companies. Back in the day when everybody had a strong perimeter, like everybody had a hard exterior, but once an attacker got inside, it was kind of free reign, right? So
you mean kind of like this, kind of like this, like a little piece of caramel, like
just
that?
like a little, yeah, exactly.
It's so good. Love it.
So I'm so jealous of him right now. He gets to eat the caramel first, so that's good.
Every time you see caramel, I'm gonna take a bite.
All right, that's fair. Like, so like if you think of it, identity really has three key components right now that we're looking at. Like legacy environments, we're keeping them secure. Like AD, yes, I know there's like a movement towards Azure AD, but Active Directory on-prem, is required by legacy applications. So like, and securing AD will secure those applications inherently. Digital transformation, that's a big buzzword these days. How can we actually, make applications, easier to access? Identity is a big piece of that. And a building block is zero trust. So we're going to get into that a little bit later, but, essentially identity is based on zero trust is based on identity. That is the ultimate piece for zero trust to work. And
that phrase zero trust, that's a trigger word for me. That we're going to get into that a little later, but
I know.
what I really like is, in my line of work, I've been involved in quite a few breaches, and sometimes you're negotiating with the bad actors, especially with some of the work I do with CSGA and Terra Nova Defense. And it's interesting. Hackers don't actually hack anymore. They just log in. Why?
Exactly.
Because we've made it so friggin' easy for them to get credentials that all the skills where they've learned how to, use Mimikatz and all these other tools to pull hashes and they don't even need it anymore. We're willing to give it to them. So this is a true problem, right, Paul?
Yep. And that's a great point, Nim. Like, most attacks that are carried out on identity for organizations are commoditized attacks. So essentially just common misconfiguration that everybody has, and then attackers just take advantage of it. Could be group policy, could be account restrictions, could be something like that. Like the ROI for an attacker right now using commodity attacks is about 1,000%. And,
right.
Yeah, so 0 days, people worry about 0 days, but 0 days are not as effective as anything like more common attacks that are out there now.
I completely agree. I couldn't agree with you more. So we have a very diverse audience in the room. We've got some people from operational technology, some people who are in security, and some folks who are leaders and some folks who are doers. But I opened with 2 questions, and I want to come back to those 2 questions, and I want you to wear this in the back, or have this in the back of your mind, and wear this hat throughout the process, because these 2 questions are the lens that I'd like you to understand. And yes, I do want you to lose sleep over this if your answers are no and no, or never and never, because the purpose of this education is for you to walk away with some value, and the value is, if you said, I don't know, or I don't think so to the first question, and you said, I've never done it before to the second question, now after this webinar, we want you to walk away with an understanding of what you need to do or how could you do. Okay? So the 5 vulnerability identities every CISO must know. And if you came into this meeting looking for a very cool technical list of 5 things, that's not what you were going to get here. Because the reason I enjoy working with Semperis, and my firm has partnered with them, is because we're not solving technical problems here. We are focusing on solving business problems. And the business problems happen in many different capacities when it comes to identity. You could be in a mergers and acquisition situation. You could be a new leader inheriting an organization that grew through M&A. You've got multiple forests, multiple domains, and you've got this legacy debt that you need to deal with. You could be part of an organization that went through a modernization. All your AD and infrastructure is up to date and par, but you now are going through M&A and you've got problems where you've got multiple domains and forests and you've got questions on federation and trust and consolidation, so you don't have to have 5 different domains. We want you to walk away with thinking, legacy access technical debt, what can you do about it? I want you to introspectively think, do you know how your AD is configured today? I can see the audience, and I think there might be one person who might say yes to this, but I want you to ask, how well do you think you know it? The perimeter is not so secure. That's a fact. And you definitely are not watching your AD close enough. And lastly, the recovery process. Now, we put this in business terms specifically because once we address these 5 holistic vulnerabilities, the CVEs get addressed along the way. That's why this is not a list of CVEs, right, Paul?
Correct. Yeah. This is simple things that we can do to make your AD more secure, and just calling out things that a lot of people don't realize or don't think about on a day-to-day basis when it comes to Active Directory. Exactly.
So let's jump into it. Let's talk about the first one here, legacy access and technical debt. Your growth through mergers, the lack of patching of domain controllers and identity cleanup. And then there's that, perspective where there's versions you can't fix because whatever, you've got, Windows 2008 or whatever, Windows Server 2008 or whatever legacy application running and has a domain controller with AD running on it. And it runs some manufacturing systems, and you've done everything you think you can, but you didn't mitigate it well enough. Let's talk about this one, Paul.
Yeah, okay.
What are some of the options out there for folks?
So essentially, a lot of people don't understand. So the Microsoft tiering model that they talked about, it was big a few years ago. It's still kind of out there. Tier zero is considered, people just see it as domain admins, for example. So the key, the be-all end-all administrator for Active Directory. But tier zero is bigger than that. Tier zero is anything that could interact with a domain controller and make changes. That's the way I look at it. Domain admins, enterprise admins, sure. If you're running SIM MIM, that's also considered tier zero. I've even seen it in the past where people are patching domain controllers with, used to be SCCM, now it's like Endpoint Protection Manager. If you are put those agents, you can push a package that will actually insert someone into domain admin. So if you're patching your DCs with a patching solution, that got to be considered tier zero also. So a big thing is cut down on excessive privileges. Like many years I was doing AD security assessments, and one of the biggest things that I identified was excessive privilege in domain admins, for example. People would have 50, 60, 70 people in domain admins. I would tell them I would like to see 2, 3 tops. And essentially what it is, all those people can be compromised, and then they can actually, be used to kind of gain access to your Active Directory. And monitoring. So a lot of people monitor up down for DCs, but they're actually not monitoring, who's using what kind of privilege. So, that could be different solutions, obviously, but, if you're not watching who's using privileges or actually doing, say, access reviews, that's also a big key tool here. Don't give away domain admins forever. Have it on a check-in, check-out basis, basically. And prioritize your attack paths. So domain admins, there's a lot of tools out there now, such as Bloodhound and a Semperis tool called Force Druid. It will show you how an attacker can actually go about compromising different users and computers to gain access to privileged credentials. So that's the thing. Kind of be in the know. That's what I kind of tell people. Know who can be attacked and how can they be attacked, and kind of secure that path.
Yeah. No, this is great. I mean, AD was created 23 years ago. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, 2 of the founders of Semperis were actually part of the thought leadership that created Active Directory back in the day, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
so we got this 23-year-old young adult who is out there, and I think where we all, as the village parenting this child, have not disciplined it well. That's basically what I can say. Is, I mean, as a father, I'm looking at it and saying, well, this 23-year-old, college-going young adult here, and we've got to put our head around this. But what do we want you to know? Secure your privileged users and groups. I think that is the major takeaway, right, Paul?
Correct, yeah. And one little small is like AD, like when you stamp a new domain controller, all your mistakes don't go away. They just get dragged on forward. So that's the technical debt piece. So just because you're putting up a new DC doesn't mean you're starting fresh. You're probably dragging everything from the year 2000 on. Now it's the year 2023. So
of course, because it's so much easier to do that than actually do the cleanup behind it. It's complicated. Yep. Sometimes we don't have the right people, we don't have the right process, we don't have the right technology. Yep. And that's a good segue. So no one knows how it's configured. The cleanup piece and configuration review piece is never a priority because tech leaders struggle to explain that work in quantifiable business terms. Well, we're now giving you the way to position it, and the way to position it as a major vulnerability and a key organizational business risk. Because now is the time, because we've already declared identity as a new perimeter. Hackers don't actually hack you. They log in because we give them our credentials, building lead, get phished or whatnot, business email compromise. Then there's a lack of documentation. There's no tribal knowledge or continuity, right? Like whoever built it and started it, they left. New guy came in, new gal came in. They just copy pasted and kept going. Lack of just to explain it in a simple way, copy paste. Yep. And historically, it's never been monitored, managed, or maintained as it should be. And here's the scary part. I challenge everyone who's gone through an M&A or inherited domain controllers. I am a believer that malware existed before you took over the system, and the attackers know more about you than you do or your team does, right?
Absolutely. Yep. Like depending on like how, if you find it or not, sometimes access is being traded on the dark web to your organization. People, done what they had to do, and now they're selling access to your organization because they're still there. They have the persistent backdoors put in place, basically.
That's it. The trick here, like, I think we're saying use proper descriptive names for objects and groups. Right. Paul, you said something the other day that hit me. It's, just because security by obscurity, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah, security by obscurity. Yeah. So, thinking that by giving it like kind of obscure names, like you're not hiding anything from anyone. One of the things I would do with doing security assessments, I would make a small little bet with the people. Say, I bet you I can find your built-in administrator for your domain in 30 seconds. They're like, nah, it's impossible. We got to hit away. I'm like, there it is. Because the thing is, like AD, like the name is just a name. Like AD knows stuff by what's called a security identifier, a SID, right? So I would just go look for that SID and find it right away, right? So attackers know what they're looking for. Security by obscurity doesn't fix anything anymore. Like.
That's right.
But gaining visibility into your AD, that's a huge thing. Like, AD is like not a skill set that people learn anymore, right? This is the thing. Like, schools are not teaching AD. People are more or less moving to cloud, and a lot of the AD we'll call like talent and is actually either aging out of the workforce or probably moved on to other jobs, right? So this is a big thing right now. So a lot of that historical knowledge is lost because of that. So, having a tool such as Purple Knight kind of actually can tell you how your AD is configured, kind of pinpoint where you kind of got to get better at in 5 different categories. So.
Agreed. So what do we want you to leave with on this slide? We want you to understand that you need to expediently gain visibility into your AD configuration. And the idea here is you don't depend on a person, a team, or a managed services vendor, because these are all human-based solutions. The recommendation here is get a tool that is tied to your organization, a tool because a tool doesn't find convenient ways of doing less work. It always does the same amount of work it's committed to doing. And you establish control of how your AD is configured and what you can do with it. The best analogy I can use in this case, folks, is to say, when you're building a house, you don't hire a handyman and say, hey, handy guy or handy gal, go ahead and build this whole thing for me. Here's a hammer and a screwdriver. You hire experts and get technology, tools, plans for each of those individual areas. There's a plumber, there's a framer, there's a tiler, so on and so forth. So think of it that way. Get the right tool, you are in control.
And you're exactly right, Nim. I love that example. And we're into the jack of all trades, master of none situation for AD. Like AD is generally another task of another role. So,
that's right.
Right. So, do they know AD intimately and how to configure it securely? Most of the time, it's just a service that kind of does what it needs to do, and it's just kind of sitting there. And
that's right.
It's resilient. AD is super resilient in terms. So.
That's it. So the perimeter is not secure. My personal experience, a high number of elevated privilege users that probably don't need it. My favorite is the exception within organizations that talk about, APIs, interfaces, hard-coded legacy apps that say, hey, I gotta have it. It's the only way to do it. We have to hard-code it. That's how the tool works, or that's how the code works. This is really a sore point, especially with large enterprises like banks and airlines and other companies where, the company is almost 100 years old, but they've got some major challenges here with credentials baked into systems and tools.
Yeah, and like the way we're kind of working on that now, and I know, Nim, you don't like the term zero trust, but so zero trust, and this is a great point just below, it's not a product or a service. So don't let someone come in and sell you zero trust.
You know who I don't trust? I don't trust the guy or gal telling me, I want to sell you a zero trust solution.
There you go. So that's a great point. So zero trust is all about, securing and gaining visibility into your environment and assuming breach. So trust no one. Treat it like it's coming from the internet and you don't know what this device is, even though it's a managed device. But authorize and authenticate everything. MFA is a huge piece of this kind of thing, right? So, I saw a stat, I think, from Microsoft. There's only a 30% uptake in MFA right now. So that's startling when you think about it.
Paul. What do you mean? Every time I log in, I got to do this? No, it's inconvenient.
I got to pick up my phone. I got to put a number in now, because now we're doing the number verification kind of thing. So zero trust is a holistic kind of package of things that you had to do. Gain visibility into your endpoints, gain visibility to your perimeter, how identities are being used, check in and check out of privilege. We were talking the other day, Nim, about I had one customer who told me that they were completely scrapping password policies and password complexity because Microsoft told them to. I was like, no, you didn't read the whole article. Yeah. Microsoft said, if you get to a zero trust situation where we're, authorizing and authenticating and MFA is turned on and, we're getting all this telemetry back from devices, and we're threat hunting on the fly and you have a SOC, then you can turn off your password policy and you got passwordless. So you go to hello for business or, 502 keys or something like that. It's not just a passwords are done now kind of thing. So, it's a journey. Zero trust is a journey, not a product or a service. That's the way I look at it, right?
I fully agree with that. It's really a mindset. I had, on the MFA topic, it's a bit passionate because MFA alone is not security, but MFA is the entry into creating some sort of a journey towards a more secure perimeter within your organization, protecting your identity, because that's what everybody wants. I asked the last CEO of one of my customers who did not want to turn on MFA. I said, well, are you willing to put up a bond of $4.35 million for your company personally? Yep. Because you're the target, you're the risk, and you're where it's going to happen because you don't have it. And anyway, that conversation led to eventually the person coming on to MFA. So, but it just takes that dedication. It's easy as leaders to say, yeah, you know what, it's the boss, we're going to move on. But no, you have to believe in this as a mandatory requirement in organizations these days.
Yeah.
This one's a fun one. you're not watching it closely. I guarantee you're not watching closely enough. I have a SIM is not the answer, because by the time your SIM gets an alert, it's too late. And small changes over time always go unnoticed, and human inconsistencies and fatigue.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk a little bit about this one, Paul.
Sure. So just to give you an example about you're not watching closely, I was working with a customer years ago, like in a different role, and they got a visit from some security people on a Monday morning, and they said, "Do you know your organization is carrying out an attack on a government agency in the U.S.?" They had no idea. So they were compromised, and they were basically being used to carry out a cyber attack against a pretty important agency down in the U.S. Right? So no idea. So were they watching? Not at all. So continuous vulnerability assessments. That's something that will give you that insight. So have something that's pulling in data in real time, watching it, and kind of flagging it for someone's actually, like for example, there's a golden ticket attack being carried out against you right now, or like there's a number of different things that we can probably talk about, like different indicators of compromise of exposure, tamper-proof tracking. So this is a good one. We want to put that data somewhere where someone who just can't get at it easily, kind of thing. So this goes back to a least privilege model again. But we don't want, if we're secure, if we're pulling this data in, we want it secured so that we can use it for threat hunting or forensics later on. Security alerts. If you're not, if you're ingesting data and you just got it there and you're using it for, like, you want real-time security alerts. You want to know, oh, like this is happening right now. Like notify the SOC or notify the people who need to take care of this immediately. And like some tools, like such as like one of the tools I specialize here in Semperis, we have the ability to auto remediate. And auto remediate essentially says if you see this change happening in your Active Directory environment, like automatically roll back that change, and then let people know that that change happened and it was rolled back. So I use this for domain admins. Like we talk about domain admins being the keys to the kingdom. That group, we want to know who and when changes are actually being made to that group. I tell people, let's put auto remediation on domain admins. So even if someone joins that group, they're automatically going to be taken out because we didn't approve it, kind of thing, right? So, but again, like knowledge is power in AD. That's the way I look at it.
Absolutely, and this comes back to the question that one of the thought questions we've left everyone with right now is, how have you planned for the disaster, and how are you planning on recovering your Active Directory? Because again, if you've never tested it and you've never tried it, how sure are you can recover it? And then the other question is, if you are recovering it, but the backups or the solution you have had malware in it to begin with, are you just putting the problem back and going to be kind of in this, oh my God, what's that movie where everything just happens over and over again?
Oh, Groundhog Day.
Groundhog Day. Yeah, you're going to have just an AD Groundhog Day moment. Yeah, exactly. Let's jump into here the recovery process. This one's interesting for me because I'm a believer in automating mundane tasks that humans are more likely to make mistakes with. I have a financial transaction system background and also a healthcare background. And so what you don't want people doing is repetitive motion activities combined with fatigue. We looked into the standard Active Directory recovery process that Microsoft has. It's a 100-page step-by-step process. And what's interesting is it actually says in there, when you make a mistake, if it doesn't work, you have to start back at the beginning and do it again. So I can only imagine, the pressure on a human during a crisis, and by the way, sit quietly and quickly, but expediently get this done, with the CEO saying, are we done yet? Are we done yet? What's taking so long? So for everyone's enjoyable reading, I have included the link to the Active Directory Force Recovery Guide. When you get the deck, you can copy paste it and definitely enjoy. But most companies admit to saying we've never actually tested it. What are you finding, Paul?
Yeah, I've seen that's more happen more often than not, and I've seen that in the wild with different customers. Like I think we were discussing the other day, Nim, about one customer I had. It was an insurance company here in Canada. They basically, so it wasn't a ransomware attack per se, but they deployed Windows 7 to all their domain controllers over a weekend mistakenly. So when people came in on a Monday, they had to, no one could log in. They couldn't figure out why. So, you know, we were called, we went and looked at them like, well, no one can log in because there's no domain controllers. So we had to go back and find backups. And they were very confident in their backups. Like, yeah, we take them every day, twice a day. But they didn't test their backups, like, right? It's like Nim was saying. So in the end, pretty much we had to go back 21 days to find a viable backup. So, and this is the thing, like no one's testing right now, right? So everybody just assume that they're going to work, or they're taking a full server backup, right? But really, so do you need to do that? Probably not. Like, you know,
but
like
Paul, I'm sure they did a tabletop exercise and everything was okay.
Everything works great in a tabletop exercise, right? But it's that one piece of physical media that we need to verify that no one actually did, right? So
I know.
Yeah, and then some people, like, if you have tapes, like your tapes are off site. How long is that going to take you to get a tape brought back to on site, kind of thing? Right? That's not a 10-minute process right there. So.
You know, I got a really good friend. His name is Kenrick Bagnall, and you know he runs a podcast, and he's ex cybercrimes with Toronto PD. But he's a basketball fanatic. He's been playing basketball for 30 years, and he's really good. And he said to me in a conversation, and I love this quote: "Practice does not make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect."
I love it. Yeah.
Because under pressure, humans don't go to the best form of themselves. Under pressure, even in a military drill, a law enforcement drill, in a tabletop cyber recovery situation, people fall back to their practice mode. And in practice mode, you make a lot of mistakes because it's practice. So the goal is to make your practice perfect, not amount of practice, but quality of practice. And this is important.
It's the quality that matters.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter how many humans you have and how many humans are doing this together. Perfect practice takes time, repetition, and rewarding certain results. And Active Directory always is the identity is always the last thing anybody wants to practice fixing because it's complicated. And we also don't know how it's configured. So if we break it during practice, we might not be able to fix it. So there's also that fear in the background, right? All I can say is back up your AD and back it up correctly. And I'm going to go back to saying use tools to do this, because without the assistance of tools and the pure dependence on humans, we're not going to be very successul.
And this is the thing, yeah, and that's a great point, Nim. Like, and automation is the key there too. Let's take some of the human element out of it. You know, I got in a situation years ago when I had to call the backup team because someone deleted a bunch of DNS records and took down critical applications. Right, so. You know, like I wrote a bunch of PowerShell scripts to kind of look at the reverse records and then recreate the A records because the person who deleted them was sloppy in that regard. But the backup team got to me. This happened on a Friday. The backup team got to me on a Monday. Said, "Hey, you need a restore?" So I'm like, "Yeah, like 3 days ago." So but kind of thing, yeah.
Wow. Well, what are the takeaways and what do we talk about? What are the answers to the 5 vulnerabilities? We want to leave you with some actions. We want you to think about securing your privileged users and groups, gain visibility into your AD configuration, implement zero trust, monitor yourself for unusual activities in AD, and have a good backup, an immutable backup that you know will work, and be ready to recover. Ready to recover is actually 3 words, but they're very heavy because it means that you're confident, you're capable, and you have validated it. There's integrity to it. These are important things. I'm going to now talk about something special that we have for everyone who registered and attended this webinar. Because we're very good at what we do, we're offering everyone here a free quick evaluation of your Active Directory. So we're going to put up my email address and Paul's email address at the end of this meeting. You will have a chance to reach out to us to get your free assessment and report. This is no obligations. If you know me, there's no ties here. What we want to do is make you stronger by sharing information with you of things you could not see or things you did not know. Because what our assessment will do is give you an in-depth understanding of your Azure AD and your on-prem Active Directory so that you can make informed decisions to move forward. Now, we are a consulting firm. We are a software product. Along the way, if you have questions for us, like, hey, I've got multiple accounts, multiple identities, multiple forests. How do I bring these together? How do I streamline them? We're more than happy to, again, offer our time to help solution these things for you and lay out a roadmap. And you can choose to work with us if you want to. But what I do urge you to do is take us up on this free offer, because we're going to do all the work. You're going to get the report, and then you can make an informed decision on where you need to go before a crisis happens. What bugs me is when I get the phone call after something bad has happened. Hey, we're dealing with this crisis. Can you please help us run the assessment? Can you fix the train while it's moving? Absolutely, but we wish we didn't have to meet you in a crisis situation.
No, that's true.
What are your thoughts, Paul? You want to chime in?
Yeah, I love it. And so like Purple Knight's going to help you kind of like, it's going to categorize like the different areas that it's going to, so, you know, AD infrastructure and delegation, group policy security, Kerberos and account security. You know, it's going to take a look at all that, including your Azure AD. If you have an Azure AD tenant, you know, like, and where can you use this? Well, like, you know, maybe before a pen test, or you just want to know your AD. Like maybe there's a high turnover in your identity team, and you kind of want to see what the current state of affairs is. So this is amazing. Like, yeah, and you know, you're in good hands for sure.
So we're here to educate. We're not here to sell. What we want you to take away from this is understanding how you can help improve your company's identity management platform and move forward. We're here to help you and support you in any way possible. And I want to open it up now for questions. We wanted to keep the webinar at about 40 minutes, and you know we finished on time here, so that we can answer some questions from the audience and see if there's any pressing issues you'd like us to answer. Go ahead and type those into the chat or into the Q&A section of the webinar.
So just as we're like waiting for some questions there, if you look at my beard and my picture here versus my beard and my webcam, you can tell I'm in cybersecurity because there's a lot more gray now. All of a sudden, right? So,
of course. Oh, that's funny. Awesome. So you know how you did a good job in the webinar is you've answered the question. Now a lot of these people are having in the back of their minds, oh, you know, have I, you know, going back to the questions we want them to think about, what would I do when AD went down? And have I ever had a successful recovery test? I have a feeling a few IT managers and IT directors are going to get phone calls after this. But, you know, if you are going to lose sleep, these are the right questions to lose sleep over, because this is where very expensive mistakes and problems begin. And let's not, and you know what's funny? The bad actors know this. They know we've never tested it. They know we don't know how to recover it. So this is where they want to have some fun.
Yep, and I tell people, like, say, phishing attacks, for example, they know who the administrators are in your company. They probably got a better org chart on your company than you do, kind of thing.
That's
so,
right.
Yeah, they know who's who in the zoo for your company, kind of thing. And so
that's it, for sure, for sure. Great. So we don't have a lot of questions. I thank everyone for joining us today, and I hope we've been able to share some insights and add some value. You know, definitely do reach out to Paul and I. We would love to set you up on that free assessment and give you your, you know, sort of no obligation report. And yeah, we look forward to hearing from you on the next steps. Thank you.